The night began with laughter, but it ended in terror. I still remember the evening we gathered in the village square. I remember that night like it happened yesterday. Ozioma's screams cut through the village like a knife, waking everyone. I ran out of our hut, along with the rest of my family, and we rushed towards the noise. There she was, lying on the ground just outside her house, her eyes wide open, staring at the sky like she was looking at something no one else could see. Her body was stiff, her mouth open as if caught mid-scream. It was the first time I had ever seen real fear on someone. Here is how it all started. Once upon a time, my village Uminachi was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business. It was a small village surrounded by thick forests and wide, endless farmlands. People here didn't just follow tradition, they lived it. Every festival, every greeting, every rule was passed down from our ancestors, and the most important rule of all was the one about the village girls. Stay pure until marriage. The city girl, Hadar, had come to visit, and her presence was magnetic. She was everything we admired, bold, carefree, and bursting with stories of a life beyond our small village. With bright clothes and an infectious laugh, Hadar spoke of the freedom she experienced in the city. She told tales of parties that lasted until dawn, of boys who adored city girls, and of living without the heavy weight of tradition. The village girls, including my closest friends, hung on her every word, their eyes sparkling with envy. For generations, we had been taught that virginity was sacred, a gift to be cherished and protected. Our parents often boasted about the purity of their daughters, and our customs were woven into the very fabric of our lives. But Hadar's stories ignited a fire in the hearts of my friends, leading them to question the customs that had guided us for so long. One by one, they decided to break the rules. It started small, sneaking out at night to meet Hadar and share in her adventures. They felt powerful and alive, caught in the thrill of rebellion. I watched, torn between my loyalty to my friends and the values I had been raised with. As the days passed, their confidence grew, and they began to flaunt their newfound freedom. They laughed, danced under the moonlight, and indulged in a world of excitement. But an unsettling change swept through our village, one that no one could ignore. The girls became distant. Their laughter was replaced by nervous glances, and I could sense an undercurrent of fear. They met in hushed whispers, sharing stories of strange dreams and dark shadows that seemed to follow them. I felt an uneasy knot form in my stomach as I realized the joy that once filled our gatherings was fading into something darker. Then came the night of the scream. It was late, and I was in my room when I heard Ife's voice pierce the stillness. I rushed outside to find her standing in the square, her eyes wide with terror.
"I saw her,"
she exclaimed.
"The old woman from the stories. She was watching me from the bushes."
Panic spread like wildfire. The other girls huddled together, whispering about the figure that haunted Ife's dreams. The elders gathered, their faces grave, discussing the spirits that guard our ways. They warned us that breaking tradition could unleash forces we couldn't control. Soon after, a plague swept through the village. Crops withered, livestock fell ill, and people grew weak. It felt as though the earth itself was retaliating against us. The elders believed it was a punishment from the gods for our disobedience. Fear gripped our hearts, and we learned that the only way to break the curse was to make a sacrifice, a virgin to appease the spirits we had angered. The realization sent chills through the village. The girls who had once felt so bold were now gripped by terror. The thought of being the one chosen for sacrifice loomed over us like a dark cloud. As the days dragged on, the weight of their choices pressed down harder. They knew the village needed a sacrifice, and the idea of what that meant sent shivers down their spines. One stormy night we gathered in my home, seeking comfort from the raging tempest outside. As we sat in a circle, Ife spoke up, her voice trembling.
What if the spirit is angry with us? What if one of us must be sacrificed?
The air thickened with fear, and the girls exchanged panicked glances. It was then that I understood how deeply the fear had taken root. We had once been carefree, but now we were trapped in a nightmare of our own making. As the storm raged, we heard strange noises outside, rustling leaves, whispers carried by the wind. I could feel something watching us, and it wasn't just our imaginations. The atmosphere was charged and dread hung heavy in the air. The following morning, we discovered that one girl had vanished. Neka, who had always been the bravest among us. Her absence sent shockwaves through the village. The elders called for a meeting, urging us to come together to appease the spirits. They spoke of sacrifices and rituals long forgotten, desperate to protect the remaining girls from the wrath that seemed to loom over us. Days turned into an agonizing blur as we prepared for the ritual. The village gathered offerings of food and flowers, hoping to mend the rift between us and the spirits we had disrespected. The elders led us in prayers, but the atmosphere was thick with despair. Hadar, who had brought us excitement, was now a ghost of her former self. Her laughter had faded, replaced by a somber silence. As the night of the ritual approached, we felt a mix of hope and dread. We all understood the stakes. One of us would need to volunteer to be the sacrifice to save the village. The girls huddled together, tears streaming down their faces as they realized the weight of their actions. They had wanted to break free, but now they faced the ultimate consequence of their choices. Finally, after a long, painful silence, Ify took a deep breath and said,
I will do it.
The room fell silent, then erupted into tears. She had always been the strongest among us, and now she was willing to bear the burden of our mistakes. On the night of the ritual, we gathered under the moonlight, trembling with fear. Ify stood at the center, her face pale but resolute. The elders began their chants, and I felt a chill in the air. The shadows around us grew darker, pulsating with an energy that sent shivers down my spine. We prayed for forgiveness, pleading with the spirit to spare us from any further consequences. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the square, extinguishing the lanterns. In the darkness, I heard whispers, soft yet menacing, echoing the warnings of our ancestors. The girls clung to each other, terror etched on their faces. When the lanterns flickered back to life, I noticed something horrifying. Hadar was gone. She had vanished into thin air, leaving only an eerie silence in her place. The remaining girls stood frozen, realization dawning upon us. We had lost not just a friend, but a piece of our innocence. The plague worsened in the following days, claiming more lives and bringing despair to our village. The elders grew frantic, desperate for a solution. They knew we were running out of time. They decided that a decision must be made. One of us would need to volunteer to be the sacrifice. The atmosphere was heavy with grief as we faced the reality of our actions. As we gathered to discuss the dire situation, the tension was palpable. Every glance seemed to carry unspoken fears and regrets. The girls looked at one another, silently debating who might take on this role, who might save the rest. I felt a surge of fear wash over me, but then I spoke up. It should be one of us who willingly steps forward, not a decision made in anger or fear. The others nodded, understanding that this was the only way to restore balance. After a long, painful silence, Ify took a deep breath and said,
I will do it.
Her courage was undeniable, but I felt my heart shatter. The room erupted into tears and we held each other tightly, knowing the price we were about to pay. On the night of the ritual, we gathered under the moonlight, a somber procession that felt more like a funeral than a celebration. The air was thick with tension, and I could hear the soft sounds of our footsteps on the ground, a reminder of the burden we carried. Ify stood at the center, trembling but resolute, ready to bear the weight of our mistakes. As the elders began their chants, the wind picked up, howling around us. I felt a chill run down my spine as the shadows deepened. Then, the figure appeared. The old woman. From the stories, her face twisted in anger.
"You have broken my laws,
She bellowed, her voice echoing through the night.
and you offer a sacrifice only when faced with ruin."
Ify stood her ground, tears streaming down her face.
We seek to atone for our mistakes. Please let this be enough to save our village.
The spirit paused, the air thick with tension. Then she raised her hand and a blinding light enveloped Ify. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us until they reached a deafening roar. When the light faded, Ify was gone. In her place, a gentle breeze swept through the square, carrying the weight of our loss. The old woman's spirit looked upon us, her expression softening.
"The price has been paid,"
She said, and with that, she vanished into the night. The plague lifted soon after, and the village began to heal. But the loss of Ify hung heavy in the air, a haunting reminder of the consequences of our choices. Hadar never returned, and her laughter faded into memory. We learned that night that some traditions exist to protect us, and when we stray from them, the darkness can close in, demanding a price we may not be willing to pay. The village would never be the same again. As I sit here, now, I can still hear the echoes of laughter turn to screams, a lesson etched into our hearts forever. The events of that fateful summer linger in our memories, a chilling reminder that freedom is not without its costs, and some decisions can never be undone. In the end, we understood that the real sacrifice wasn't just Ify or Ozioma, it was our innocence. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, like the video and comment on what you learned from the video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting tales, just like this one. Thank you.